Security Halt podcast. Let's go.
You're dealing with an expert in guerrilla warfare. With a man who's the best. With guns, with knives, with his bare hands. A man who's been trained to ignore pain, ignore weather, to live off the land. His job was to dispose of enemy personnel. To kill. Period. Win by attrition.
8, got up at midnight, and I was like, fuck, I'm not going to be able to go back to sleep. So it's like, well, get out of bed, go do something. So,
jeez, turning and burning, running reverse cycle and not reverse cycle at the same time.
It's the absolute fucking worst. But I stick to my routine. I know that this will last for a couple days. I got to look at what's causing me to like have stress or anxiety. Honestly, what's come down to it is it's the final week for my math class, and I just got to prepare for the final test. That's all it is. It's just the like, oh fuck, I have to get an A because a 4.0. I mean, that's a big deal.
Jeez, you're a better man than me, man. I'm like, I got to make sure I can keep the BAH coming in, so keep her above a C. You know, I mean, not really. I mean, I do try to do well in school, but like, I'm not brokenhearted if I get like a B on something.
Yeah, and that's one of those things where it's like it's the first time in my adult life that I've been able to devote myself to my passion, which I'm studying things that I'm passionate about. I am not passionate about math, and I've worked really hard. And it's just it's like just getting kicked in the dick every day for an entire summer. But it's finally here. It's finally over with. I'll be done with this class. But it's like, man, like I'm just
that's exciting.
ready.
That's the bummer. Like when I started going to school, I front loaded all the technical classes because I didn't care about all the core classes. I just wanted the technical knowledge. But I had one business class I had to take last semester, and it was like me and maybe one other vet and like a ton of people right out of high school. So our worldview and experience was so wildly different in this class that I was like, golly, I felt like I was in the wrong place the whole time.
Dude, I feel that.
Yeah. And you're supposed to keep your major, you know, the whole point of the GI Bill is supposed to help you get a degree, but I consistently changing my degree every time I want to take different classes. Cause like, dude, I don't need all these things. I just want the knowledge. That's it.
Yeah.
You know? So yeah, I'll be switching majors again this semester.
Nice. Where are you switching it to?
Radio television.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah. So I started off, under professional photography. I did probably like 75% of that degree minus a couple electives and things. And then, so I switched over to RTV this semester. So it's all like live broadcast, podcast, audio design, everything like that. So
nice.
Yeah, just putting more tools in the toolkit, I guess, and collecting some BAH.
Yeah. Yeah. I did I went through Berkeley for an audio design and storytelling through sound course. And I was so excited. I was thinking that I was going to learn so much. And I'm just going to, it might be liberal, whatever. This is like really good school, and they're putting this, I'm going to pay out of pocket to do this thing. I remember being done with it and like realizing like I did learn some cool things. So I was like, because I never played around with storytelling through sound and pacing, and I learned all these little things about like audio effects. But at the very end, the guy's like, when it comes to doing this stuff, when it comes to podcasting, you just have to go out there and do it. And I was like, motherfucker.
You're like, thanks. You could have told me that at the beginning and I would have asked for a refund, man. But I'd say that's definitely something that I've learned through school is having grown up, having not going to college, going straight to the military.
Yep.
I always thought that there was so much more to college. Like, man, the people who went there, they just must be like so good at what they do, especially people who are doing technical roles. And what I found out, even through my first semester, I was like, you don't really leave with enough knowledge to be an expert in any sense of the word. In fact, especially in the days and age right now of like all the instructable options online through like YouTube or private courses and things, dude, you could be so far ahead of what you'd learned in a semester of school in a fraction of the time just by self-study. And a big part of it, it's like, okay, I do like being around people who have been in the profession. I can ask, I can work with a professor directly. So it's good to give me a left and right limit on the skill set. But like, if you really want to get good, just doing a couple classes in school is not going to prepare you for the workplace, which is the same as, even our environment too. It's not like you graduate the Q course and you're like a seasoned special operator.
Yeah.
But you've gotten yourself into the door. But I think that's something you have to understand is like, don't expect to like go to school for a technical skill and immediately go out and be one of the best out there.
Yep.
You have to find mentors. You have to find somebody who's doing the work that you like to do and study under them, and get better. So that was definitely an eye opener for me. But, you don't get BAH for YouTube classes. So I'm going to continue going to school until that well runs dry. So
Bryan Ray, welcome back to your part 2 Security Halt podcast. Man, it is, again, it's fascinating to have another Green Beret brother that's, along the same mission sets, along the same passions. And our first sit down, we tapped into a lot of things, a lot of common things that we experience as Green Berets or soft professionals in general. Even it spans military experience. But one thing we didn't get a chance to talk about was the importance of mental health. And one thing that I realized through this experience, through this journey and this podcast is when we share our struggles, when we're willing to be vulnerable with our story, we give others the strength to realize that like they are not alone, they can get help, and that this is not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. We are all going to go through this. It'll be different for everybody, but at some point we all need to take a knee. And Bryan, today I'd like to focus on your journey and specifically your struggles towards the end of your career.
Yeah, awesome, man. And coming on and talking about these things openly, it's definitely not something that like I enjoy doing. It's not at all, in fact. But what I do enjoy is possibly doing for somebody else what was done for me, which was normalizing seeking help, identifying symptoms, and just making it okay to go get checked out.
Yes.
Because we're so good at putting things away and focusing on the task at hand. Just like deployment, you kind of make yourself emotionally numb, just with all the dirty, nasty things that you see, because you don't have time to allow emotions to dictate your decisions. You have to move on with the reality that you're in right now. Move that body, do this thing. It's like, it has to be robotic, it has to be rote, and it has to be muscle memory, because you can't let your emotions, dictate what you're doing on the ground when it's actions on. But the problem is, what we do is we take all that shit that we like put in our dump pouch emotionally, we just keep it there. And eventually it gets too full. And then, you start finding unhealthy ways to process that. And that's where I was. I had specifically one situation in Afghanistan that really messed me up. And it really drove in a lot of guilt, a lot of not even wanting to be on this planet anymore, to where like in a karma sense, I felt like I deserved to get killed. Like I didn't want to do it myself, but I felt like if something happened to me, then it's because I earned it. And I was like sometimes kind of disappointed when it didn't happen. And I lived with that for years before I did anything about it, because I was like, well, this is just part of the job. This is what we all do. And, it got to a point where when I was telling somebody the symptoms and things that I was going through, that they're like, that's not normal. Like, that's not something you should have to do. That's not a burden you should have to carry the rest of your life. And that's where kind of my journey to seeking help started. And it was through a friend. It was through one of my NCOs on the team who, I've always trusted. He was always kind of a confidant to check like, hey, what do you think here? Does this make sense? Just really smart guy. And when I found out that he was getting help and he told me his problems that he was having, I was like, dude, that's the same shit I'm going through. And he's like, yeah. He's like, so it's like once I found somebody that I trusted and I knew that they were getting help, I was like, oh shoot, man, I thought that I had no idea you were going through this.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, man. So that's what it took for me. And like, as much as we say that we care about mental health, I got shut down several times trying to seek help, even within our own community, before I finally found somebody that worked for. And just kind of break down that process. When you get done with the deployment, you have a post-deployment health assessment. And there's always questions, and you do it like, a couple days after you get back, and then 90 days again. And when you do that, it's like you're always like, I'm just going to rush through this, dude. I just want to go on leave. I just want to be done. And of course, they ask all the mental health questions. Have you considered hurting yourself? Do you want to hurt other people? Did you experience anything terrible? All that stuff. And usually you just kind of like blast your way through. You're like, nope, typical deployment is what it is. And on one of those, because it was my first deployment to Afghanistan, and I had a subsequent one after that, even dealing with all this stuff. So for the second one, I was honest about it. I was like, yeah, I do have dark thoughts. I do have problems. And because of how much we talk about how much we care about mental health, I was sure that would pop up something to where the help would come to me. I was like, all right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to tell the truth on this one. And it was like nothing came back, And I was like, okay, well, I guess, and that automatically already told me that my problems weren't serious enough, because I was like, well, I was honest. I wrote exactly what I was feeling and all this stuff. And nobody saw this and reached out and said, hey, do you want to talk to somebody? Or, hey, we're going to make you talk to somebody. So it already kind of invalidated my trauma, because I was like, okay, well, obviously I didn't pass the threshold for whether going to have somebody help me.
Yeah, nothing wrong.
Okay. All right. So I guess I'm normal. Good to know. And then before my second deployment, you sit down with a counselor. I have my wife there, and we were like, hey, we know this is going to suck. It always does. It's tough for my wife when I'm gone. We have a ton of kids and a lot of responsibilities. So we did like a pre-deployment couples counseling. And I kind of like started letting things out, things that I hadn't even told my wife about, like fairly nonchalantly, just kind of, I guess, again, throwing that line out and hoping that maybe it catches something to help. And I'll kind of go into it, but I was like, yeah, I've got a problem. I've killed a couple of young soldiers, and it really, really bothers me. And sometimes I cry at night, and that stuff. And like the response I got from the counselor was like, yeah, that can be really hard. I'm like, okay, you're right. Yeah, it is. So I was like, all right, well, here we are. So again, like I had two things from my own community support network that basically kind of invalidated my need to get help, because I tried reaching out, which is already hard enough to do. And when it didn't happen, when nothing really came from it, or I didn't feel like I was taken seriously on it, then I just assumed that this is something everybody has problems with, and my problems aren't bad enough to need professional help. And that lasted a couple years. That basically built like whatever wall I moved out of the way to be able to have the confidence to talk to somebody about it. I just built it up 5 times stronger.
Yep. Because
now I was vulnerable, and it got kind of like thrown in my face, like, oh, well, geez, I'm just being a wimp. Just, that is what it is.
Yeah, that's why it's so important to have trauma-informed care from our providers within the soft community. Individuals that understand, and that response, man, like, I know this happened years ago, but I'm sorry you went through that, man. I'm sorry you went through that, because in that moment, that could have been the catalyst for help. That could have been the moment where it's like, wait a second.
I could have started healing years before I did. The effects on my family, the effects on my job. And, what I had done to myself was I had applied so much guilt to my own actions that I didn't feel like I really deserved to be successful anymore. And every time I would get on a roll, you're in the roll, you're hitting the gym, you're feeling good, you're knocking out all of your requirements at work, and just things feel good. I could only handle that for so long before I felt like I needed to crash and burn, because I didn't feel like I was allowed to be successful, because I owed it. I owed it to the universe to not be successful anymore, just because of the things that I'd done. And that's the feeling that I kept, again, for years. So I was 75% of my capacity pretty much the whole rest of my career. And I'll always regret not having been better when I could have been, because I didn't feel like I was allowed to. And it sucks for the guys that worked underneath me. It sucks for the ambitions I had and the things that I could have done. And, in the end, it is an excuse. But that's how it affected me. And I wish I would have figured this whole thing out sooner, but here we are with platforms available where it's okay to be outspoken about these sort of things, to let guys know, like, hey, you don't have to live this way. And you can get help and all those things. And if you try the first time or try the second time, don't just stop. Not every person you talk to is going to resonate with you. And, now I have the one person that I've worked with, and, she was the one that was able to crack the code. She was the one who was able to really dive deep. And I mean, it was so hard, man. I was there a couple times a week for months when I first started. And I hated those days so much. Like the emotional pain of telling the story over and over again in detail and just closing my eyes and putting myself back in that spot. It would just crush me for the whole rest of the day. I was just emotionally completely wiped out. And then it got a little bit easier. And once I was finally able to go through it without completely breaking down, we were able to diagnose, why am I applying this to myself? Why am I punishing myself for this? And that's what that journey looked like. And it was, man, it sucked. But on the other side of it, and I don't think I'll ever be fully on the other side of it, I still get help. But it's way better than it was. Infinitely better.
Calling all golf enthusiasts. Get ready to tee off for a great cause at the inaugural Krulak Classic Charity Golf Tournament on Wednesday, September 11th at the historic Greystone Country Club, located in beautiful Birmingham, Alabama. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just looking for a fun day on the green, this is your chance to make a difference. Enjoy a day of friendly competition, delicious food, and fantastic prizes, all while supporting the Krulak Marine Alliance of Alabama. Don't miss out on this perfect blend of sport and philanthropy. Register now at krulakclassic.org. That's KRULAK classic.org, and swing into action for a cause that truly matters. See you on the course.
Yeah. It's a lot of people when they're still haven't taken those brave steps to getting help. We often think that, man, like I really need a silver bullet or magic wand to fix this. Once we actually admit that there's something wrong, we are looking for a magic wand, but the reality is there isn't.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of fucking work. It takes a lot of freaking work. And you said it, sometimes it's like triage. You get through working on the patient. What do? You reassess.
Yeah.
Go through, relook at it. There's the people that I look up to that have dealt with so much, that have gone the distance. They'll tell you the same thing every single time. It's a process. It's a journey. Yep. I have good days. I have bad days. That's a reality. Yeah.
And you just need to get to a point to where there's more good days than bad days. And you need to understand how to manage the bad days. And where my tipping point is, again, going back to the analogy of shoving that stuff in the dump pouch, is that it just got too full. And I would have these situations where I knew I had to do something about it. And because I was just so guilty about it, my time to process was usually at night, when the kids were all in bed and my wife was down for the night. I would put on, I had my list of songs. They were like my depression songs. and I would sit in the kitchen and I would just do dishes or whatever. And I would put these songs on. They were all like war songs or things. Yep. And because I wanted to be in pain, I wanted to feel harder, and I would just break down and I would cry to myself, like just listening to these, because I knew that they would trigger me. So I purposefully did it. Because I would be like, okay, I can do this when no one's looking. I can get this out. And this might last a while. This might last me a couple of weeks before I have another breakdown. This might last another couple of days, maybe. And it got to the point to where my method of controlling this at night was spreading beyond my boundaries, which were at night, away from anybody, so nobody knew, to where I would start having situations while I'm driving. Like I would completely zone out and I would put myself back in the situation. And then, where you kind of like, you don't wake up, but you wake up and you realize you've been driving for 15 miles and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't remember a single thing that I did for the last however many miles. I've just been on autopilot. And one of the most alarming ones was I was driving my kids to school. And it was a situation like that where I kind of snapped back into the reality. I was like, holy cow, like this is so dangerous because I'm driving with my kids. There's other people on the road that I could affect. If anything was different about my road that day, if there was a detour, if there's somebody slammed on their brakes, if anything was different than being able to basically autopilot your way up the road, I wouldn't have even been aware to react to something like that, because mechanically I was there, but mentally I was not even in that car. And that's when I knew, like, I was like, I'm going to hurt somebody who doesn't deserve this because I'm not dealing with this. And that was the biggest part where I realized this has to end somehow.
Yeah.
And it did. I was able to finally let everything out. I was able to finally process all this trauma and get to a point to where I could in a healthy way manage this stuff and move forward. But yeah, it wasn't until I thought I was affecting other people that I really knew this can't go on.
It's exactly what so many of us finally have that revelation, is we realize that it's affecting our wives, it's affecting our work and everybody else in that team room. Then it's oh shit, the mask isn't there. And that's something that a lot of people have a hard time understanding when they don't work within the community, when they don't know Rangers, Green Berets, Navy SEALs. We wear a mask and it's really fucking good. We hide so much. I have met individuals, and pain's one thing. We all know that one E8 or E7 that's struggling with a hip that needs to be replaced. 2 shoulders that are gone. Guys hide pain so well, but they hide emotional distress and they hide mental health issues even better. They're the ones that can make you laugh. They're saying the jokes. And looking back on my own journey, right before I had my own mental break, I was going to a friggin' peer-to-peer support class and talking about the importance of going in and getting help.
Yeah.
And that's the reality. That's why it's so difficult with our community. When you look back at yourself, were there any moments where anybody within that team room, any one of your close friends was like, hey, Chief, there's something going on? Or were you able to maintain that mask?
No, I was able to maintain it. And to point out what you're saying about our ability to cover things up, the bar, like the guys in this community are so freaking good that even at, a lower capacity than we can achieve, they're still excellent. You know what I mean? Like, you can be broken and still be highly effective. And that's why in this community, it's so hard to spot things like that, because we're so driven and there's such a high op tempo that it's so easy for us to be distracted. And it's when the downtime comes is when it gets way more dangerous. And that's why it doesn't happen all the way. That's why it didn't happen right after a deployment. That's why you get those random calls that, hey, our former teammate that retired 2 years ago, he just smoked himself, or hey, this dude just freaking went to jail for meth and domestic violence 3 years after he got out. And you're like, dude, what in the fuck? This guy was good to go. He was a good dude. He wasn't a problem. And again, it's because we're able, like, when you have an op tempo, when you have a passion, and you have a drive, and you have people around you that you're afraid to disappoint, you're so capable of still putting in the work.
Yep.
And it's when that downtime comes, it is when, if you didn't catch those indicators, guys end up taking their own lives. And it sucks that we're so good at it, but it's also necessary sometimes, because in the end, there's a job to do.
Yeah.
But we have to figure out how to do both. And normalizing mental maintenance, just like our spiritual and our physical and our marriage, like normalizing all those things we have to maintain in our life, but adding in mental health has to be the answer. We talked about in the last, first time we talked, how, sorry, I'm a short-term memory TBI moment here.
Welcome to Security Halt podcast.
And here we are. But yeah, so where I'm headed, without my segue, which I forgot where I was headed there. We have to be able to, that's right. It was results may vary. That's where we kind of talked into, like, your soft experience may vary. You might be a perpetual JSET guy. You might be a guy who's got freaking 2 silver stars and 8 purple hearts. It just is what it is. But because we have that environment, we immediately discredit our own trauma, because we always compare ourselves to somebody else. You're like, man, I've only gotten in 5 firefights. This guy's gotten in 10 firefights. Hey, this guy lost 2 teammates on this deployment. Or, oh my gosh, this guy went on this op and freaking it went completely south. And all. So like, you're constantly thinking of people who have done more what you think to be more traumatic experiences, or you're constantly comparing yourself to other guys in the community. And you're like, man, those guys did this and I only did this. So who am I to have trauma if this guy's doing okay? It's like, well, you don't know that guy's doing okay. And you can't compare your stuff to other people's stuff. You have to manage your own shit. And a lot of times you do find out that, oh, this dude that I thought that was doing great, shit, he's actually wasn't. He was actually getting help too, but we just keep it so private that, we disqualify ourselves because we're always comparing ourselves to everybody else in our own community. So reach out to those guys. It's okay to talk to guys that have been through horrible situations. Like, hey man, like, I know it's been tough, but did this bother you afterwards? Did you go seek help after this? And I don't know anybody that would just be like, shut up, I didn't need help, or I think most people in the community, you know, as a brother would be willing to be like, yeah, man, I'm still getting help for this. Or yeah, man, like I managed this inappropriately with a bottle for years. Or yeah, I've tasted what a 9mm barrel tastes like, you know? And you find more and more guys that are in that situation. So again, you have to normalize processing your trauma without comparing it to somebody else. Like your shit is your shit.
Yeah, it's so true. Trauma is trauma. And what you've gone through, and we have to understand too that before you came in the military, you were also just another human being that could have experienced a whole different form of traumatic events. Like you have to take the entire life into perspective. Like if you grew up in a violent, chaotic background, like if you had a childhood that was of just absolute the worst manageable things ever, that plays a huge factor. Like you have to understand that it's not just your experience in the military. You have to look at your entire life and be willing to do the work, because you can't just put that behind a wall and say, I don't need to look at this trauma. It didn't happen in the military. It wasn't combat related. Like all of it matters. Yeah, everything you experience in life, it's all connected.
It doesn't go away. You have to live with it. That has to be a part of your life. Because again, it piles up and piles up and piles up, and eventually it's got to come out somewhere. So, you know, hopefully you've got a good way of dealing with that when it comes out. Most of us think we do until we don't, you know? And alcohol is a huge problem with that. And there's so many guys have ruined their lives and their relationships because they just want to numb that pain. They just want to get rid of it. And, you know, we're so reliant on, I'm super anti-pharmaceutical for a lot of things. You know, I've seen guys with PTSD get extremely over medicated.
Yep.
And the problem is they don't just give them 2 pills. They give them a couple pills to help with their depression. But those pills have side effects. So they give them 5 more to deal with those side effects.
Yep.
And then they give them a couple more to deal with those side effects. And all of a sudden you've got a guy who's got this cocktail of bullshit that he has to be on to just be a just become a shell of himself living through life as a fucking pharmaceutical assisted zombie. And that's what we have done to so many people, you know. And it doesn't just have to be mental health. We do it to guys with like chronic back pain. We do things like, you know, again, put people on painkillers. Hey, these painkillers make me suicidal. Here's some antidepressants. Hey, these antidepressants do this. Well, let's throw some more in the mix. And dude, it's so bad. And I know there's a lot of lobbyists right now that are really trying to push for natural medicines, really try to push for like, you know, microdosing and psilocybin and things like that. And, you know, especially cannabis. I've seen guys' lives turned around by getting off all of their meds and going towards cannabis. You know, and it was eye-opening. Like a guy that I thought was just done for, just a zombie, all of a sudden has a normal life.
Yep.
And he can grow his own plants. He can make his own medicine, and it's free. And I think that's where we run into, you know, and not to get super conspiratorial here, but look, man, there's good medicine that doesn't cost a lot at all. And then there's things made in a lab that will fuck you up for a long time. and the taxpayers are going to pay for it, and it's very expensive.
Yeah.
So, take what you want for with that. But I can tell you that
I'm in the same boat. These compounds were not meant to exist within your body for your entire life. They arguably cause a lot more damage than they do good. And at the very beginning, I needed medication. I needed it. And then I realized that, hey, do I want to live the rest of my life just taking medication, or do I want to learn about the things that I'm dealing with and figure out how I can adapt my behavior, figure out how I can be better suited for my long-term health by just understanding the things that I have to change in my life rather than just going the easy route.
You're masking it.
Yes.
All you're doing is you're putting something over the pain, and you're making it numb, and you're moving through life, and you're not forced to process it correctly.
Yeah.
And even whether it's a physical injury, like a knee thing, like if you can take a couple pills a day and not have knee pain at all, where's your drive to seek physical therapy? Where's your drive to do something that's going to improve your joint health when you can take something and not feel it and forget about it?
It's that comfort over pain. And I think more of us need to understand that there is an importance in being in discomfort. There is a benefit to it. There is a benefit to choosing discomfort over comfort. Whether it's just looking at the data for your longevity of your organs, or looking at the things where you can adapt. Like, okay, maybe I can't do this because, hey, there's no cartilage in that knee. Well, there's a different exercise I can do. I don't need to take all this medication just so I don't feel the pain. And understanding the language too. Language is powerful. If I'm telling myself that I'm always in pain, which is the number one thing I hear from a lot of veterans, it's I'm always in pain. My back's messed up. I'm always in pain. Okay. Change the script. Are you always in pain, or are you in pain when you do X, Y, and Z? What can you do to improve that area?
Yeah.
There's tons of efficacy that have shown mindfulness, yoga, Tai Chi have helped with pain, but we don't talk about it as much.
No, guys don't like. And I think until you get to the other side, it's really hard to realize how young most of us are when we get out comparatively, and how much more life we have to live, because this is such a cool job, and it's such a high point and such an accomplishment that you get out. And like for me, I retired at 37. And once I got out, I was like, is this it? Is this the coolest thing I'm ever going to do in my life? And now I'm just going to sit and be in pain for the rest of my life. And I ask that for guys that are physically broken as well. Like, are you guys cool with just taking pills and just like living in pain the rest of your life? Like 37, 38, 39, 50, like those are all pretty young ages if you can maintain your health. So like, don't do that to yourself. Don't think that you're going to get out and then that's it. You're the first chapter of your life was the final chapter. It's like, no, man, like you have so much more time to conquer the world and chase your pursuits and do things that keep yourself healthy and don't turn yourself into a zombie. Like there's so much more on the other side, so much more opportunity, that what you did before can just be that. It's what you did before.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's so much more life to live to decide to just like close the door on ambition when you get out. Being an SF guy doesn't have to be the best thing you've ever done. It can just be something that developed you into who you are, so you can continue to achieve great things.
Exactly. And that goes right in hand with mental health. If you just get out and tell yourself that's the hey, I did the greatest thing ever, like that's going to really quickly deteriorate your well-being.
Yeah.
If you don't constantly try to achieve something new, or look, you're a goal-oriented person. You are.
Yeah.
If you're a Green Beret, if you're a Ranger, SEAL, Air Force Special Operations, if you're a part of the soft professions, you are goal-oriented. You are chasing something. If you don't go into this next chapter doing the same thing, actively engage, creatively, passionately looking for that next thing, you're not going to blossom. You're going to turn inward. You're going to lose color. You're going to lose that powerful person you were. And then you're going to look like this really like bleak individual that's just doing a 9-to-5. And we've seen it. I know I've seen it. I've seen some of the guys I looked up to that got out, the older sergeant majors that went on to do nothing. and they don't look like they were. They don't look like the vibrant individual that you looked up to. They look sad. They look defeated because they just accepted that they did the greatest thing ever. It's like, no, that was a stepping stone.
Yeah. And it's so common that it's almost a trope now that, you think of the guy walking around the PX or the commissary with his I served hat, just like looking for Joe, either to correct or to tell them how much better it was when you were in, or to tell, corner these poor guys and like tell them stories and stuff. And like, because you're just constantly trying to relive what you were and who you were. And I go on post occasionally, I'll go to the commissary. And I try so hard to not, I just want to be a gray man even there. I don't want to be associated with it. I don't want to like corner people. Like that's their career. That's their thing. I did my thing. But yeah, like I don't want to rest on those laurels. Yeah, what I did was pretty cool, but I can do more. There's more to life. There's more to my story. And yeah, guys, I think guys need to understand that when you get out, you're such an asset to the world. Like your critical thinking, like your ability to problem solve, your ability to like take a step back, look at the environment, assess how to approach it is so valuable in this world right now. And just our pragmatic approach to things. Like, when people ask like what a mission looks like for SF or why they're considered, like what makes them different, you say, hey, X team, we're going to put you in this country and we need you to do this incredibly tall order. Okay, great. I'm going to need ISR assets. I'm going to need these type of vehicles. I'm going to need $2 million. I'm going to need all these things to be successful. And then Hire says, we're going to give you a pallet of MREs, a couple guns, and a broken ATV. And you're like, okay, all right, we'll figure it out. And that mindset of we'll take what we have and we're going to figure out and we're going to accomplish that mission. That's something that's so ingrained in these guys. That is such an incredibly powerful tool on the outside because a lot of people don't possess that or have never had to possess that mentality that like, gosh, they're so like, I get fired up about it because like our guys could be so good.
Yeah.
But we put ourselves in a hole and say that we don't need to be good anymore. Like, guys, stop. Just use this as a launch point. Chase your passions, chase your dreams, and do something incredible. You have the mindset to do it before, and just because nobody's forcing you to do it doesn't mean you have to let it go. And I promise, because I go through bouts of depression, I go through bouts of like, am I doing the right thing? Why am I putting myself in a position where I can set myself up for failure? But when I'm on a roll and things are working, and when I'm like, it's the pursuit of passion, and that fires me up. That makes me want to wake up early. That makes me want to work out. That makes me want to be a better father, husband, person. So yeah, like that's such a huge part of mental health. Getting out too is find a drive and chase something.
Yeah, it's every person I talk to that's coming into that transition period in their life. They want to immediately kill that fear. They want reassurance. And I tell them the same thing. Like, look, you don't want the easy route. You don't want it. The easy way out, it's not going to be the thing that keeps you happy. I'm telling you, fear is good. You're not going to fail. That's one thing I want you to know. You're not going to fail in this transition. You're too good. But the fear, that fire in your belly is needed. Let that be the thing that pushes you to learn about the industries that you're interested in, looking at the different courses of action. That fear is important, but know that you're going to succeed. Yeah, because there's so many different individuals and so many transition specialists and different groups and organizations out there that want to make it seem like it can be an easy thing. And it's incredibly challenging for everybody. Everybody will have their own test and challenge going through it, but it's okay to understand that you've been through this before. You've been in the unknown. Your entire career, you've been trained to go into the unknown. This is no different. And when you embrace that and when you go into that transition period excited, even though it's scary, you're going to be way more successful than the individuals that get paralyzed by it or just look for the easy way out. Don't go for the easy way.
We put civilians who have just been living a normal civilian life at whatever industry they're in on such a high pedestal because we think that we just don't have anything that they have because, well, I was just an Army guy. I just know Army stuff. But your mentality and your soft skills that you have are such a force multiplier to any employer out there that, like, I would hire a completely unskilled, for my own company, Green Beret, who has a passion and a drive, long before I would hire somebody who's been running a camera for 10 years if they don't have the same mentality. Because I can teach a team guy, I can teach a special operator to run equipment. We do it all the time, but I can't teach and mold a technician how to have the mindset and how to have the drive and how to have the problem solving skills to where I can completely trust them in a short amount of time. Like, and that's the thing. Like, you have to realize that you are coming into it. You're coming into the civilian world as a freaking weapon. Like, you are so powerful in whatever you do. You just have to learn how to sell that and say, hey man, like, I can work for this company. I can do this. I'm a natural leader. I can problem solve. I will be honest with you because I'm okay being honest and saying this isn't going to work. We have to do something different. So yeah, like, guys, we are so much more capable than we think we are when we enter the workforce on the other side of things. But you have to process your own shit. You have to be willing to put yourself out there. But yeah, man, it's not over when you get out. That's just the beginning. That's just the next chapter.
Yeah. One of the biggest things that I realized that guys need help with is just understanding that how unique they are coming from our community. That's why it's so important to like share stories such as yours, like the ability to show an alternate path to finding what success looks like. I mean, everybody thinks that they have to have the same path, get out, contract, and that works for a lot of people, but it also doesn't serve a lot of people. I think everybody needs to understand that you can be successful in the most unconventional ways when you get out. You just have to be willing to listen to yourself. And it sounds cheesy, but man, follow your heart, dig deep into like who you are. And that's why identity is such a hard piece for all of us. It's like, you're more than the beret and the long tab. Start digging into who you are, figuring out what's important to you. And I want to ask, like, when you started doing that work, what did you identify were like the top, like, most important things for your next chapter?
I would say figuring out what, like, balancing happiness and talk all, but you can't.
Yeah.
That I never, dad's going to make it home. I never want my wife to wonder, are we going to make this house payment? You know, so that's the biggest struggle is, do I chase easy stability, which with the resume of most guys getting out, you can find a good job. You can find a good high paying job. You can find a good remote, moderate paying job really quickly. It's not hard to find a job to make money on the outside. It's really not. And again, going back to like the asset, you're mixing finance and if that's what makes you happy and if that provides a stable platform for your kids and family to do the experiences you want, then by all means go for it. But if it doesn't, if you're not happy, you know, maybe there's something else that you can choose. Maybe there's something else you can chase, something you can do. It's okay to start over. We're still young. You can go to trade school. You want to be a welder. You want to be a fabricator. You want to do HVAC. You want to do something where you work with your hands. It's okay to do that. But the biggest challenge is, am I going to leave my family struggling by chasing my dreams? Because I've already chased one dream. So is it fair for me to chase a second dream and put my family in another unstable situation in the meantime? And that's where you really have to balance. How do I do this? So for me, that was the biggest challenge and the biggest hurdle on starting my own business. And it's still the same thing that comes every now and then when things aren't working out, or, you know, I'm like, hey, client flow is slow. I'm like, dude, what am I doing? Should I just hang this up? Why should my family ever have to worry about money when I could just go get an easy 9-to-5 job and just be a robot, you know? And that was probably the hardest thing for me is being willing to take that leap and invest and believe in myself to create something that I'm passionate about, but also provides enough stability for my family. That's a hard hurdle that everyone's going to have to look at differently with their own financial situations, and their own passions, how profitable your own passions can be.
Yeah, that's something that everybody needs to be able to reflect on for a little bit. Even it's like, look, you come out and go straight into the entrepreneurial route. Like, you have to be able to look at the all the factors, not just stay married to one course of action. But once you figure out, like, you'll find your footing, you'll find your ability to like equalize going through it. But just understand that, hey, it takes a lot of work. And there's resources too. Like, there's so many things you can do, like being able to go back to school to offset some of that cash flow, like being able to get paid to go back to school, man. Like, that's something that nobody talked about.
No,
I was
there's like everybody's gone. You have to go through the TAP process. And even, for at least at Carson, they've got 2 tiers of TAP. They have the regular, everybody goes through it, like from guys retiring to guys ETSing to guys getting chaptered. And then there's the executive course, which is supposed to be all guys who are retiring or like upper echelon guys who are getting out. But, on day one, when they're like, okay, guys, you're going to get out of the Army. So remember, civilians don't know all these acronyms. You have to speak like a normal person. I'm like, all right, great, man. It's just like a week of like, it's extreme fire hose to where the things that are important just get glossed over. And they create a situation to where all you want to do is just leave because you've got clearing to do. You just want to get home. You've got other shit to work on. That you like, so much of the TAP program that you get is either irrelevant or so much common sense that you're like, you blow off the rest of it. And I found out about veterans programs that I didn't even hear about in TAP that are so powerful. Like, just the other day, I found out that there's grants for first-time veteran farmers because the Department of Agriculture, they want more veteran farmers. So even for my own ranch here, I'm like, well, shoot, like, that's another business opportunity that I didn't even know about. There's Voc Rehab. You want to get your pilot's license? You want to freaking you want someone to pay for your equipment to start a carpet cleaning company, whatever it is. Like, there's so many things out there that we don't even know about because we're inundated with all this. I don't want to call it useless because I'm sure it's helpless for somebody, but TAP, I did not come out of TAP feeling like I knew all the things that were out there for me. I'm learning about them from guys that got out. I'm learning about them after somebody else figured it out. It's like, hey, did you know that? I just heard about this. Dude, there's a lot of opportunity out there that we don't even know about, that I hope they can revamp. And maybe even they need like a soft TAP where it's like, hey, this is in-house. We take care of our own. We now provide companies to come in that can help you network or whatever. Like, I really do think we need something that's a little bit more bespoke than, hey, go down and hang out with all the guys in Fourth ID that are getting out, and I don't know, just kind of figured out. So, there's a lot more opportunities than you think. So like, use that year. I mean, hell, I think guys are getting like almost 2 years to get ready to get out now. Like, when I was in the process of getting out, they just passed that thing for NCOs, which is like, hey guys, if you sign this statement that's saying, hey, at this time I'm putting my packet in, dude, these guys are almost, and it hasn't worked for everybody, but a lot of guys, untouchable, 24 months, go take care of your shit, which is the right answer to be able to help guys prepare for things. But like, let's maximize that time. Let's actually like help these dudes figure out what they can do.
They just got rid of it at 7th Group. It was Red Empire time, which is a horrible. They need to bring it back. They don't do enough for guys. Look, the failure was on the command, not the individual. So build up a proper transition. We have to get out of this mindset that we're going to let nonprofits and benevolent organizations and individuals solve the problems for us. There's one man right now. Huge shout out to Dan Rayburn. He travels from group to group, giving some of the best pre-transition information on job placement, how to prepare your resume, how to be approachable on LinkedIn. Dan covers so many different aspects of transition, and it's free of charge. And he does it all on his own. He flies there. He sets it all up. The guy has a huge heart and does a lot of things for our soft professionals. And I can't thank him enough. And anybody that's been through any of his transition classes will tell you, worth its weight in gold. I mean, the things he's doing for individuals is fucking amazing. But our own command,
he came out to our group as well. Yeah, and it was the same thing. He will change your mindset.
Yep.
As far as letting you know just how valuable you are. And that was a huge W, because again, it was like, holy cow, you've now taken away this big fear that I'm just going to be a has-been, and you've let me know that I do have power, that I do carry a lot of weight on the outside world. And it's 100% true, but he has the corporate experience to back it up. So you can say, hey, here's all these guys that were successful, that were all former team guys, and then they hired more team guys, and it just it's just this big network of stuff. Huge asset. So if this guy's coming to your group, and you're doing whatever we call it, summit week or whatever, I think the summit at 10th group, basically where you come in and guys who are transitioning, they have these classes. But if Dan is going to your groups, listen to the guy, because he does kind of help put into perspective what you're bringing to the table as a former team guy.
Yeah, he does some amazing work. I mean, he'll fly you out and take you into the NAB streaming show and get you in front of people that are hiring, and that's how amazing this dude is. But don't just, and I'm speaking to individuals that probably won't listen to this. If you're within the command suite, you need to do better. If you're in 7th group, bring back Red Empire time and give them real transition support. Not just put them off into a corner and say, we're done with you. Because guess what?
Have to look at it's a long game. Yeah. Like, there was this push, and I don't know how active it still is or who's still involved in it. But when they were looking at the invasion of Afghanistan, how to get in, like, do you know how many people were in the Situation Room figuring out how to do that? There were actual special operators, or how many people in Congress at that time had experience in special operations? It was like one guy.
Yeah.
Like, there wasn't enough. So if you're not preparing your guys to be successful and giving them all the tools that they can, like, we need to get more of us into those situations that dictate where our boys go.
Exactly.
We need special operators in Congress. We need special operators who run large businesses. We need people to continue to do that so they can advocate for us, so they can lobby for the community. So when they say, hey, what do you guys think about Afghanistan 2.0? Should we go there and build another couple Burger Kings, make another perpetual war? Let's go for 40 years this time. Yep. Raytheon's doing pretty good right now. Maybe we can have some be like, hey, no, that's not how we use special operations. That's not how we win wars.
Yep.
We don't need to go there and create mega cities to put ourselves into, perpetuity. We need to go in with a mission set. We need to go get it done. We need to be strong. We need to be adamant. And then we need to get the fuck out, because we're using our guys inappropriately. We're burning them out. Who's going to advocate for these guys if we all just get out and just do just jobs that aren't contributing to that? So we do need guys with ambition to grow and be a huge part of the community. So, like, even if you're thinking, oh, my special operations time is done, well, maybe there is more things you can do. Maybe you can become a voice, and there are guys that are doing it. We're starting to get more guys, more SEALs, and more, tab guys that are moving into politics, that are moving into local government, and that is going to be huge.
It is. We need more representation. I always say that the best and brightest of our men and women were sent to war for 20 years, and there's no wonder why our country is the way it is. We can start changing that if our soft professionals and like-minded veterans from all across the service start leading within their community, start changing things within the community, start being of service again, start running for office. Yeah. Look, we spent an entirety of our adult lives trying to solve complex problems in really bad places. So now it's our turn to try to solve, complex problems here at home. Mm-hmm. We have the knowledge, we have the tools. We just have to be willing to do the work. And Bryan, before I let you go, I want you to share some of the tools that you lean on now. Now that you've been through the worst of it, what are some things that you still do to this day to help you stay on your mental health journey?
Yep. So one is I fairly actively revisit my trauma. I kind of talked before about I had these songs I would listen to, my depression playlist, and I still put those on. but I treat them very differently. I treat them as a song of strength. I can now sing the lyrics without breaking down. And I allow myself to go into that place and to be triumphant in my processing.
Nice.
So I know that it's not keeping me down anymore. So I do revisit my trauma. I don't forget about the things that I've done. But I access it in a more healthy manner. I let it out, and yeah, it still breaks me down a little bit. It still makes me sad. It still makes me, regret certain things. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't tear me apart anymore, and it doesn't hold me back from my aspirations. So I constantly revisit that. I also still do occasional counseling, and I went about 1.5 years without it because when I retired, I wasn't clear on how to continue that process. It was easy when you're in because I can go to my PCM. They get me appointments with, they have the Intrepid Spirit. I think they have it at a couple groups now. And that's where I went for my TBI and for my PTSD stuff. But then when I got out, I was like, oh, what do I do? How do I do this? How does TRICARE work? Wait, healthcare is not free. I actually have to pay for it still. You know how long I didn't know that? My entire career, I thought you retire and you get free healthcare. Dude, that's not true. You just get access to TRICARE still, and you pay for it. So, I mean, it is great. It is great, but it's not what I believed my entire career.
Yeah.
But I did start recently, and this is only because my therapist got out and started a private practice that's in network. So there's no copay. I can do as many appointments as I want, and it's super easy. So I still do that. I do that as just a checkup, a life check to see how I'm doing and just to keep myself in check. But yeah, I don't memory hole my trauma anymore. And that's been one of the most helpful things because I don't have big breakdowns. I don't have those because I'm constantly living with it. And I just kind of do it that way. What works for me might not work for everybody else. Everybody's going to have their own way to manage things like that. But that has been, that has probably been one of the biggest players on me being able to move forward without going deep down into depression again.
Hell yeah, man. Well, Bryan, I can't thank you enough for coming back on and sharing this with us, brother. It's going to be impactful, not just for our SOP professionals, but to any veteran, because like we said before, trauma is trauma. And if we can show people how we've overcome ours and what helped us, might not, not every tool may help them, but some of it might, and it'll help somebody start on their journey. Thank you for being here again, brother. And I can't wait to have you back on to talk about your next endeavor, man. Yeah, before you go, how can people get a hold of you if they'd like to talk to you some more about your journey?
Yeah, man. I mean, I'm on, I'm on Instagram. I'm not super active there, but that's, you can kind of see what I'm doing on that side, both on the business side and on the, just my life part. But I can drop my contact info in your show notes. And,
perfect.
At any time, any vet is able to reach out. If you want to talk about my paths on the business world, if you want to talk about, maybe you're scared to talk to about somebody, your own trauma or whatever, dude, reach out. I'm happy to help anybody at any time move forward. It's all, rising tides lift all ships. Let's collect the best ships we can and do our best, in a positive way. And to leave just on, I guess, kind of one note, avoiding your problems is not strength. Put yourself into perspective on that. Strength is facing your problems and moving past them. So if you've kind of manipulated your way into thinking a strong man doesn't have to process his trauma because he can move through it. No, avoiding your problems is not strength. Facing your problems and moving through them is strength. So just use that mindset and make yourself better. Don't become a statistic.
Hell yeah, brother. I can't say anything better, so we'll end it on that note. Awesome. Thank you all for tuning in. It's again, Bryan Ray, thank you for being here. We'll catch you all next time. Till then, take care. If you like what we're doing and you're enjoying the show, don't forget to share us, like us, subscribe, and remember, we get through this together. Take care.